Welcome to the Think Space podcast with myself, John Staskowski, and Danny Massaro. Our goal with this podcast is a simple one. We discuss and dissect a prescient topic, issue, or theme that we think is interesting and might help us humans better understand why we think, feel, and do what we do. If you'd like to engage in these types of conversations too, you can check out thinkspace.academy for a unique cohort-based course that will help you think critically and live authentically. Hope you enjoy the episode. The definition in German, so Schadenfreude is a German word which essentially means harm, joy. And the definition of that is the distinctive pleasure that people derive from others' misfortune. And it's I've always found it quite an interesting word because we don't have an English word for it in our language, do we? There's a few German words like that, but we don't have like a direct translation that we use. So it's a bit of a funny word, that. But the reason we're doing this episode today is because I have been swimming in the deep, pleasurable ocean of Schadenfreude for the last few weeks. For people listening, Danny is a big Everton fan and I'm a big Liverpool fan. The podcast's not going to be about football, but it's just an example of how Everton haven't been doing too great for the past season, but 26 years or something?
Longer than that.
And Liverpool have obviously been doing quite well recently. So it's just been a sea of abuse that Danny's been getting with not just myself, but other mates of his taking pleasure in his misfortune as an Everton fan. So that stimulated us just thinking about this a little bit and then thinking, actually, it's a good topic for a podcast, because it is quite a universal trait that I'm sure all of us will recognise as something that we have. It's not even really a trait, it's an emotion. And I've got a quote here just to start us off by a guy called Aaron Ben-Ziev. And this was from a book chapter on looking at different human emotions. And he says, Schadenfreude is a perplexing human emotion. On one hand, it's one of the most pleasurable, but on the other hand, it seems disgusting and unhuman, even sadistic, since we know we ought to be sad rather than happy about others' misfortunes. So that's what Aaron Ben-Ziev says about Schadenfreude. So it's a perplexing human emotion, Danny. Are you perplexed by how you're feeling at the minute?
No, not really, because it's hard to take being the butt of the joke, isn't it? It's hard to be the one. But when you're on the other side of it, you can cash in. So it's a blessing and a curse type, thing, isn't it? Schadenfreude was it came. I think I first heard of it when it was like you saw somebody sort of crying or something after the football team lost. It was a rival team, and there was something about the fact that they were upset that you'd be at the other rival team would be almost laughing at the TV screen, watching them getting upset. And it was like, yeah, they're going. I'm a football fan, I get that. You don't like it when your team lose or don't play well or whatever. So I know that feeling, how it feels to lose, but yet I'm happy that they're feeling that feeling at the moment. And it's a bit like you're twisting the knife, but all types of people have it. And, I've asked about this week what they felt of it. One of the sort of recurrent things was it's something linked to status, especially with people who you're close with or who in terms of they're not like way out of your league. You might generally it's fiercest when you've got a close rival. And that's why it's weird, because it can even be with your friends.
Well, I don't see you as a rival, so why am I so?
No, but it's a bit like mimetic desire, isn't it? We talked about. We don't know. I don't see you as a rival, but there is always rivalry going on, like with people. You might not think, oh, they're my direct rival, but there is rivalries and good rivalries, because you sort of move each other along, keeping up with each other, and and life develops that way. So, but one of the things that kept coming up when I was asking people this week was this feeling of "I told you so." So it's like, you should have listened to me. I could have I told you so. With the sort of thing I've noticed with football is you follow a football team and you get all excited and you say, "Oh, we've got this new player and we've got this new thing and we got this and we're gonna, or someone might say, "Oh, I'm going to take this new job or we're going to move to Australia. We're going to build an extension." And so you might be at home going, "What are they doing that?" There's risks to that. But part of you is thinking, damn, like they're getting an extent, or they're going to have a great life, or they bought some new players and they're going to have a great team, and all these examples. You sort of fear them getting ahead. So when it doesn't happen, and you part of you's predicted the downside of their risk or what they've attempted to do, there's a really smug, nice feeling of you should have listened to me. I've got this life. You should have just stayed put. I knew that'd go wrong the moment you told me. So I think there's an element of I've got this sussed and there's the proof, and that's an element of like you've kind of not in a nasty way, but you've got your comeuppance. For you've got your comeuppance, Danny, for even thinking that when you signed Frank Lampard that it'd even get any better. You should have listened to me because I support Liverpool and I know about football more than you. And basically, you should have just listened to me. And then it goes a bit further. It's almost like, and that day when you were young and you picked Everton, you should have picked Liverpool like I did because I know about these things. And that's the sort of underlying back feeling of, and another thing that come up was status, and it was like I am temporarily above you at this very second, even though there's all these other things in life that we all share and do. But right at this moment, you are the sort of butt of the joke. So I am temporarily in this moment above you, and there's nothing that you can do about it because I'm right. And I think that is always going on, and we know that as giant banter. And I think when you grow up and you're just the butt of that, I think it's quite healthy for you. And I do think how you take Schadenfreude and people sort of laughing at your little bits of misfortunes, because I don't think that then they laugh at, well, I'll come on to it, but they don't laugh at it if it goes really serious. You've been framed, candid camera, all those things. When I was a kid, there was a video knocking around called Faces of Death. And it was exactly the same stuff, but the guy who sort of fell out of the lift or fell off a building died. So it was like, that is exactly the same as what you've just seen on You've Been Framed, that they got up and rubbed their head and everyone laughed at them. But this video called Faces of Death, it was like this illegal, weird video going around where people actually died on film. It was all the same type of stuff, but they just like broke their arm or it was serious, so they died. And that's how close Schadenfreude can be. It's like it can things that can be almost quite serious, and they'll laugh at you for it, but it just a little bit more, and it's not, and they would never laugh at you. So it's a really, really strange thing.
I mean, that's why he's using the word perplexing in that quote. I do think it is a perplexing one. The You've Been Famed one was always interesting because I remember sitting and watching that with, say, like, I'd be at my grandma's on a weekend and, you just had like your Sunday dinner and stuff, and then you sat and You've Been Framed would be on, which is for people who are not in the UK, is like a candid camera
Yeah.
calamities, isn't it? People having calamities, but it's done with like a comedy. And I suppose because we're watching it, we know that they must have been all right ultimately, that it wasn't on your dodgy Faces of Death video.
Yeah, they're up a tree. They're sawing a branch off, but they're sawing off the branch they're sat on, and they fall down, and basically the chainsaw just misses them. But they get up and walk off, and the family's laughing, and that's all right.
But I remember watching that and my dad like proper hooting at, some of the, like you said, just it would be like, I don't know, they're on, say, a swing and then the branch snaps and then they land in the water and like smack the head off a rock or something. And they'd be in tears laughing. And I'd always have like, there's an initial, oh, that's funny. But then straight away I'd kind of empathize and think, oh God, imagine how much that hurt. That classic look where people
Yeah,
would get up and kind of, when we were as a kid, you'd fall off your bike or something in the street and you just get up straight away and get on and just get
yeah,
out of there because you didn't want to be seen. And you go around the corner, you just be like in agony, with like waiting to
yeah.
fall off your bike, or I did anyway. So maybe that was part of it. I always used to. I didn't really experience the Schadenfreude in that sense, whereas other people who I was around, and not just my dad, but mates and stuff,
Mm.
See you're in the street and you see someone trip over and fall flat on the face, be in tears laughing, and I'd be like, "Oh God, that must have hurt." Like I'd feel sorry for them rather than now. I'm not saying I'm some kind of like Gandhi figure who's just like
Oh, so let's say you were playing golf, and this links into sort of like someone's mouthing off that they've got these new clubs, and they were brilliant. They get these new clubs for Christmas, or you go out playing golf with them as a kid or whatever, and they think they're great, and they get this new driver out, and you haven't got it, and you hit a shot down the middle, and they put two balls out of bounds with a new driver. Is there a part of you a bit like,
that's a bit different though because there's no physical pain, is
oh,
there?
look, yeah,
So if they're not
yeah,
hurt,
yeah. So yeah, that's what I mean. It's complex because you immediately look on the pain, whether it's going to hurt
but
them.
I think a lot of Schadenfreude is that. So that video that I tweeted of the model, so there's a model on a catwalk on, I think it's from the early 90s, this clip from a news show, and she's walking down the catwalk and like really like quite comedically trips over. Like she's trying to save it, but her ankle goes and she falls over, and it's the two news anchors just hooting, laughing at what she and even that I'm like, God, she must have proper hurt her ankle there. It's on these big like high heel shoes, isn't she? Turns it and you just think because you've done it yourself, like playing football, and he's like, God, that must be killing. But they're just in tears laughing, and I find that video funny because I'm laughing at them laughing rather than the model in the clip.
Yes. Well, it's a lot of slapstick, isn't it? In comedy, it's the sort of get Tom and Jerry stuff, isn't it? And bang your head, and or they do it on The Simpsons, don't they, with the itchy and scratchy? They take it to the extreme, laughing at the or how the suffering of the other one, and the sort of Tom and Jerry was like that, wasn't it? And so it's obviously built into something because they make loads. There's been loads and loads of comedy about that. But obviously, in a comedy and a cartoon, that there's actual. It's not a tragedy, is it? It's overall, no one's going to get hurt because it's a cartoon or it's a comedy. I remember Planes, Trains, and Automobiles were full of that, and when they nearly crashed in the car and all of that, and they were sat there, and he was like, "We can laugh about it now. We're all right." And they were laughing how funny it was, but they nearly, they nearly died, and it's obviously part of the condition.
Remember, like American Pie and films like that, they were basically just one long episode of Schadenfreude, one laughing at these
Yeah,
like teenagers just getting into different
yeah,
scrapes and stuff. That the quote at the start, Aaron Benziev, he makes an important or he distinguishes between two important characters. So he says Schadenfreude is an emotion whose main concern is personal comparative concern, but he distinguishes that from sadism because both Schadenfreude and sadistic or sadism, they're both kind of where you're getting pleasure from someone else's misfortune.
yeah,
So the emotion of Schadenfreude is more about your kind of personal comparative concern to them, whereas sadism is more of a behavior than an emotion. So that's where you're deriving pleasure from deliberately kind of hurting someone and inflicting pain on them. So there is a
yeah.
difference there. And just when you were mentioning it, reminded me there was a paper I read from Wang et al. In 2019, and they had three different types of Schadenfreude. So according to them, there's an aggression based,
Mm,
which is very much more that's about kind of group
right.
identity. So your group is better than the other group, or the in group that you're in is better than the out group. They
Yeah.
had a rivalry based, which is kind of similar, but that's more based around individual achievement and jealousy. Which, when I read it, I was kind of thinking, oh, that seems to be more
Right.
the
Yeah.
football element of it. And then the third one they have was justice based. So that's where,
Mm,
a bit like you mentioned with your golf example there, that's where
yeah.
you feel or you're getting pleasure from feeling someone's getting what they deserve. So there's like a comeuppance to it. So you think someone's been cocky because they've got new expensive golf club, and I'm maybe laughing when they carve one out of bounds off the first tee or something.
Yeah.
So those three types are quite interesting, I thought. Just how because I was struggling thinking, well,
Yeah. Yeah.
where's the me hammering Danny for what Everton do
Yeah.
on a football pitch? It was definitely not aggression based, but I think for a lot of football fans it is aggression. But like football fans who are going to the game
No.
and getting into fights with rival fans and stuff, there's definitely an aggression element
Yeah.
to that when they lose. Individual achievement, it's like, well,
No.
I don't think I'm jealous of
Mm,
Danny or I'm not
mm,
achieving anything by Everton getting relegated. So I don't know where it fits in there. And then justice based, it's like, well, I don't particularly think you deserve to
Maybe
just be in
you
psychological
do.
turmoil every time Everton play. So it's funny, isn't it, where it doesn't seem to fit into any of those. And the other thing, or the other categories around it, which I was texting you about when I started looking into it, there's kind of those darker elements to it. So another paper talks about the dark triad. So Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy.
Mhm.
They're what's known as the dark triad. And there's studies that have shown that people with those traits tend to experience a lot more Schadenfreude and more often, as do sadistic people and kind of people who are just cruel and stuff like that. So then I was texting you, I wasn't thinking, oh, maybe there's like a darker element to this, like underlying the surface, and that's why I'm taking so much pleasure in Everton playing poorly.
Yeah, I think that right. This is a little bit of theory. You've got worse since Liverpool have been flying high, right? In my experience of it, right, and I've noticed it with other friends as well. So at the very time, I'd naturally be thinking, "You're having it like you cannot lose a match at the moment. Yeah, it's just the best time ever, and it's just." Looks permanent, doesn't it? It's just pure and utter class for Liverpool at the moment, and it seems like the Schadenfreude has, gone up. So maybe what it is, there's a link to this sort of status and confidence to naturally be like, I can give it now because it's so far, it ain't coming back. There's no way it's gonna. There's nothing that they can do. So it almost becomes not one of those issues that you said before. It almost just becomes a plaything, a bit of fun, a little bit like, well, it's just an extra bonus of being so dominant. A bit like, having a court jester. I'm the king. Now I can just I can just do that for fun because, and each time that little bit of, might get used to it. So each time that little bit of fun is taken off you, maybe it's a bit like, oh, I was enjoying that. They've had a couple of victories now. And then as soon as and obviously linked in with the reward system in the brain and the bump, the banter, it's not so much you want to hurt me, it's the more that you want the pleasure, the little fun element for yourself. You're just toying with whoever happens to be there. So you might just can't resist just going, look at fat Frank Lampard. Look at this picture of him. So it's interesting that, isn't it? It's like you're kicking someone when they're already down, and it couldn't be going better for you. But it's almost because it's only football, and you wouldn't do that necessarily, in any other area. But it's just a bit of a play thing. It's just banter, and that's what goes on a lot with football. It's just banter. But I think the banter goes up more when you know you can't get it. You're not going to be getting it back. I haven't got an Everton fan at the moment has got no leg to stand on in any way, doing anything back at Liverpool in any capacity, or about the players, about Klopp, anything. It's just almost planet perfect. You can always say a few things from history, and I think I can refer that to the times where there was a time where I was with Laura on the tour and we were there, and she got to number one in the world, and she was playing great. Everything was going superbly. And I can remember myself getting a little bit like, right, that's that buzz gone. I got used to that. And then almost starting to like not want people who hadn't done that, rivals and people we sort of knew. I kind of didn't want them to have it. I got more. I got a little bit more pleasure out of them, sort of like not getting near it, or I didn't go in the face about it. So I actually, in some ways, became a bit annoying, a bit of an idiot, and also got a bit cocksure as well, and confident, and a little bit, yeah, I know about this and I know about that, and I got this sort of inflated sense of it wasn't even me who was playing, was it? And that's the thing with football. You actually see your people actually get ballooned up because they're associated with something that they support and watch from a distance. They don't actually kick a ball. They almost feel like this growth. Remember a mate of mine at work years ago when they won the European Championships. I went into his office. I went, "Well done." He came back from 3-0 and won it. Damn, I was hoping you were going to lose, like thing, laughing. And he went, "Annie," and he put his hand out. He went, "Shake hands with a European champion." And I was like, "What have you done?" But he genuinely felt that good. He was up. I think what was good for me at the time when I probably got a bit of that as well, like when Laura was doing really well around the squash scene. When I started then to go back out with my mates, I went out on a few nights out. It was really good for me because they basically were like taking the mickey and pulled me down, laughing at me for things and so on. So I definitely think that there is a theory I read as well that you do lose your empathy slightly the more that you go up in status because you feel a little bit more untouchable, a little bit more Machiavellian, a little bit more powerful, and therefore a little bit more like protective of that feeling. And therefore, you sort of pick down a bit more. You're more confident to do it. You can't say that glass houses don't throw stones if you live in a glass house, can you? Because it's like you're living in Liverpool fans are living in an absolute mansion at the moment, aren't they? I can't throw anything at you.
Well, I think I said to you, I don't
Yeah,
think it doesn't get
yeah,
better, does it, for a Liverpool fan? Because it's not just Everton; it's like Man United is struggling, so it's the whole thing at the minute. And that's why I said to you, I wonder if some of the Schadenfreude comes from that, because
yeah.
10, 15 years ago, it wouldn't have been that. It was Liverpool fans getting it from United fans and Arsenal fans and whoever.
And Liverpool weren't kicking Everton or anything or whatever. It wouldn't have been. They'd have just been like, "God, you were bad. You're even worse."
Yeah.
But now it's like they're really turning the screw as we're having our worst bit. Not generally speaking, I'm not saying all Liverpool fans. It's just interesting, isn't it? The more powerful you might get and more up you get, the more that you might start doing Schadenfreude.
Well, we've got the baggage though of decades though, haven't we? So we can appreciate well, certainly as a Liverpool fan, you can appreciate the kind of the wilderness years as well. When when we were remember when Roy Hodgson was manager and it was like they were talking about relegation and all sorts of stuff. That I'd said to you the other night. I remember one of my worst moments as a kid was at primary school when it was Liverpool and Arsenal going for the title, and I think Arsenal needed to win 2-0 on the last game of the season at Anfield to win the league, otherwise
Mm.
Liverpool would have won the league. And Michael Thomas scored an injury time, didn't he? And my best mate at the time was an Arsenal fan. And going into school as like an 8, 9-year-old, knowing what was coming, because all the week,
Yeah,
and he had his like, I still remember his yellow and black Arsenal kit, wore it to school that day. Just to wind
yeah.
me up because he knew, and like going in and just thinking this is the worst thing ever.
Oh, and I thought about like the Liverpool thing is set it in school as
Well,
well.
like, when you said that, it reminded me of kids because a lot of these fans now
Yeah,
don't have that baggage
yeah,
that we've got. So if you're 13, 14, you're
yeah,
buzzing, aren't you? If you're a Liverpool
yeah.
fan, you just think this is it. This is just what life is like. So they don't maybe have the
Mm.
down bits to appreciate the Schadenfreude when they're not doing so well because they've never
Yeah,
known what it is to be not
yeah.
doing so well. They're just on top of the world. But that another study that I dug out that I sent you by there's some weird names today. Shameh Sori et al. And they did a paper looking at Schadenfreude in young kids. And they actually found, or they demonstrated it in kids as young as 24 months, show signs of Schadenfreude. And it was kind of a test that they set up where I think they got unequal rewards for doing something. And the kids that got more of a reward evidenced Schadenfreude towards the kids that got less than them, even though they'd done the same task basically. So even at 2 years
Yeah,
old,
yeah, 2 years.
they were saying that look, it's almost like there's a real evolutionary aspect to
Yeah,
this where it's just built into
yeah.
us
Well,
as an emotion. So there must be some sort of benefit to it somewhere along the line.
Well, Nietzsche, weren't he? It was his one of his main philosophical bits was will to power, and it wasn't necessarily the will that we have a will to be a leader or dominate, and it was interpreted in many different ways. But it was just to have a will to just have that extra bit of influence over our environment. We have a will now that obviously we might touch on this in future podcasts where that was a different Freud's will to pleasure, that ultimately we all just want pleasure type thing, and obviously Frankel's will to meaning, that we all just really want meaning. So, it was Adler who took on Nietzsche's will to power in that ultimately we just want we just want to be a little bit better than someone else. They said, £6,000 more than your brother-in-law is the ideal wage.
Yeah.
It's yeah, we're equal, but and we're similar, but just a little bit better than. You just make them. You should have listened to me. You should have done what I did. We're just, I've got this life thing sussed, and I also think this is another side of it, is when, let's say, like, one of my mates was going through a tough time one time, and we were doing a good life in some ways, going around the world and this, that, and the other. I was trying to help him. And the thing that made him better the most, or made him laugh, or made him sort of feel a bit better in himself, was when I went to him and said, I've been having a tough time myself. That, Laura was coming to retirement, things weren't going well. I was confused about what I wanted to do with my work. I wasn't, I was a bit bored of the travelling, and I was, life was getting a bit weird. And Laura had a few losses. A player I was working with had left, and in bad circumstances, and I was just fed up. And it did the trick in terms of making him feel better. And I thought, yeah, like, sometimes you can be a bit of a, you can be a, with the way we present ourselves, we don't show our vulnerabilities, and we don't actually say, look, I know Liverpool are flying, but I'm a Liverpool fan, and it looks like it's all good in my world. Honestly, I'm not doing very well. When you expose yourself a little bit, and everyone just wants to sort of fit in and be okay. Everyone wants to be on a level. I think that's an interesting thing. It's not that you feel better by someone else having some misfortune, because it sort of pulls you up a bit. It makes you think, well, my life's not quite as bad. It's like at the moment, like, this is a dead simple one. Having a baby, tough night's sleep, with the baby. And then you hear, like, Laura might say something like, oh, some friends have just texted me, or they're on a WhatsApp group or something, and four of them have had an even worse night. So immediately you're like, well, feel better then. But that's not logical, is it? You just think, oh, that's even worse, because even my friends are suffering. But it's not. It doesn't work like that. You kind of compare yourself, and by people having a bit of something go wrong a bit, it can pull you up. So you can go, oh, you look like you've got the perfect this, the perfect that. Everything's going well for you. So when something, no matter how small, looks like they're having a bit of goes wrong, the pleasure might be more of a relief thing. It might be more, haha, like, there isn't such thing as a perfect life. Even you get bad news time, and that can go quite deep. That can go quite deep into some. Like, you hear someone's going to get divorced, or you hear someone's lost a lot of money. Once you've got over the original Schadenfreude, you think, no, it really is bad. But the first emotion, the first little buzz you get, sometimes is, oh, that's interesting. Oh, right. And it's a bit dramatic and a bit, I'm glad it's happened to them and not me. And maybe we're okay. Maybe my marriage isn't as bad as I thought, because we thought they were perfect and they're getting divorced. Oh, and it comparatively makes you feel a little bit better.
Just when you mentioned before, I remember looking into like online forums. I remember going down a bit of a rabbit hole where that's one of the major benefits in it. With different like health forums that you see. So someone's got a particular health issue. Just the very act of seeing that other people have got the same issue as them, and often worse than them, makes them feel better. I'm sure there was studies showing it's often better than just the actual maybe medication that they're having or treatment that they're having. The thing that makes them feel most
Yeah.
better is seeing other people suffering with the same thing. Now I know there's probably like an empathy angle to that and stuff as well,
Yeah.
but it kind of links in, doesn't it, just to what you're saying,
Mm.
when you kind of realize, oh, it's not just me, other people have actually got this worse. It brings you up a little bit, doesn't it?
Mm. And the other thing is, like, we know each other really well. So I'm quite put together, and and things are going well, okay, and that. So you can hit me with as much of it as you want, because you know that I can take it. I'm solid. I'm not on my knees at the moment. You wouldn't be sending me that in if I really said I was going through some real stuff. And that happened last season. Liverpool. Oh, actually, talk about Liverpool. They lost 6 games at home last season, didn't they? And Everton actually won a game there. And we were all online, and we were all watched it together in our WhatsApp group. And one of my mates, there was like 4 Everton fans, one Liverpool fan. Oh, my dad was in. My dad's become a Liverpool fan lately. He used to be Man U, but that's another story. you know. But anyway, he's and I actually texted him. We'd all had a good night. We finally got a victory after like a million derbies. You know, it was behind closed doors, not even a real derby, but they won. And they were all good and played well, and really, that's great. And then later on in the night, I text my one the Liverpool fan and just said, "Are you all right, mate?" Because he's actually had a tough time. But I didn't text my other Liverpool mate. I was sending him. If it would have been you, I'd have been sending you everything I could find. Do you know what I mean? Like when the Premier League looked like it were going to get suspended, didn't it, because of COVID? And there were loads of things knocking around about you're like you're a million points clear, but you're not going to get it. And that were like, hey, sending stuff in. Now, I wouldn't send that to my mate who was having a wider tough time. So I think again, it's like there's a calculation goes on in your own mind quite instantly. And even with the squash, there were certain players that quite a lot of the time I'd be like, I hope they don't win. They've been a bit cocky. They said this to me once, or they said that, and they're being a bit, and I seem a bit threatening, but we've shown that. But then there'd be still times where if they'd had a bad time and they got a good win, I genuinely would be like, oh, good for you. But again, it would probably because they weren't really that close in some ways. But if you'd heard that they were having, something had happened to the coach or personal problems, you went the other way and your human side came out and you actually just wanted to help. In some ways, like it is banter, in it. It's just banter and pitching the sort of Mickey taking and banter and joke, taking the Mickey. It's just pitching it at the right level. But then there's this other level of Schadenfreude where it's, I suppose, like you say, it must get closer to people who are a bit sadistic, a bit jealous, a bit messed up.
I think envy comes into that, doesn't it? Envy is just, I think it's probably quite a natural human thing, isn't it, to be quite envious of people,
Mm.
depending on your circumstances, I suppose. Because you're a bit like when we talked about mimetic desire again, wasn't it? That you're
Mm.
always comparing and contrasting. Often it's social media as well, isn't it? Where like you see a particular lifestyle and you're quite envious. And I think we love that in this country, though, don't we? And I think I'm sure we've talked about it before, where we love knocking people
Yeah,
off the perch, especially celebrities. Like young athletes when they come on the scene and they're like this wonder kid. We love it. We absolutely love it as a nation. But then once they get to a point, we then love just knocking them off.
yeah, and I think that it's a strange thing about this balance principle, isn't it? About ultimately there's a theory in the world, isn't there? And I saw this when I was looking at it about the just world, about fairness, that everybody should get their little just about enough portion of what, and there should be equality. So when you see someone getting a little bit too much, and if you feel that that's also by sort of like in your culture unfair means, so politicians that are like this and that, or people who've married into money, and people who have maybe not done the work and got lots of rewards or fame for just being famous, sort of thing. Then when they slip up or something bad happens to them, that's where Schadenfreude is like, ha, because there's a natural thing of you cheated, you blagged it. So I'm glad you have got your comeuppance a bit. I'm glad, and obviously that's come into politics a lot, aren't they? I think I was reading about in the Indian politics, of the last election, there's something like 63% of the speeches was just Schadenfreude taking the mickey of rivals, to the point of like times where they slipped, or time, not even politics, things that they forgot to do. So that in the public's eye, it was like, don't go with that person. They're the butt of a joke. They can't lead this country. So it's a very powerful thing, and in some ways, maybe it has developed to bring people back down to a just world, and to say you can't have everything. It's not fair that you have all of that, and when it goes wrong for you, and that's the bit, isn't it? The Lance Armstrong thing. I know he was a cheat, but it was like, yes, he's been busted. What a cheat. I knew you were good. I knew she was too good to be true. And I knew, and and then that's slightly back to that. You should have listened to me because I knew. It's easy to know after the event. Oh, you could always tell. So if Rafael Nadal or something happened to Roger Federer, who are squeaky clean, aren't they? Really, and loved soccer by or Andy Murray. If something came out about them, there'd be loads of people that would go, ha ha.
I've just done that exact same thing. So, there was the whole Djokovic getting into Australia.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you've seen today, it was in the media that Nadal just got beat in another final.
Yes.
And apparently he's been having loads of like breathing issues and chest problems and stuff. And my first reaction was
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
justice for
Yeah.
Novak kind of thing. Because he's getting his comeuppance for, when they just kind of, and I mean, I don't mean from a vaccine, get it or don't get it, just like no one really
Yeah.
stood up for him, did they? They all just kind of left him hung out to
Yeah.
dry. And you straight away like, yeah, Schadenfreude, that's kind of something he just deserts coming back for not standing.
Yeah, and I say, and again, that's what I mean. So I think of Djokovic, and I think of the way sometimes he is. He's very, very in it. He's a warrior guy, isn't he? And he's ultimately, I want it, I want it. That's great. That's his personality as well, and there's nothing wrong with that in sports. Be like a Michael Jordan type thing, that kind of thing. So when then they don't get it their own way, there's an element for me of like, yeah, you deserve that now because you would, if you would have taken it all if you could. You'd have won every single thing and took every accolade you ever could take. I think Cristiano Ronaldo's a little bit like that, isn't he? An admirable quality, but we do like to see them fail because of it.
I always used to think that as a kid with Alex Ferguson, that there was always like a karma element to it, which I suppose is
Yeah.
Schadenfreude again, where because they won so much and they used to really like
Mm.
dislike him as used to just it was all about the dark arts and the amount of stoppage time goals he would get and he would be into the referees and he was just and they always used to think karma will it'll get sorted in there. So in my mind, that's it now. It's like, yeah, you had your 15 years. Karma always comes calling in the end. So this is it. You've got a 15-year wilderness now.
Yeah, and well, the concept of karma is probably this just world feeling where, so therefore, when you see it, you enjoy it because it's re-establishing the nature's balance, if you say, or a forced balance in the world. Because there was a metaphysics side to will to power, even that some people interpreted it that way, not just a person, a human side to it. But yeah, maybe there's this force where everything's supposed to be centralized. We have this natural urge that everything should be balanced. And if anyone goes off on a tangent, like if Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos goes on the next shuttle, they doesn't, you don't
Be
want them
on
to
your death
obviously get
video.
killed or anything. No, but yeah, but
Exactly.
cases of death. But if it just they score to set off and it just goes boom and falls into the sea and he's like that, oh no! You hear that everybody got saved and everything's fine. You're kind of like, well, serves you right, trying to go to flipping. You're just like where there's inequality, you're more prone to it. I think to not necessarily because you like seeing their misery, but mainly just the joy of it all coming back to the center.
Well, there is another German word, which I don't think is technically the opposite of Schadenfreude, but kind of means the opposite. So, Glückschmerz, and I hope I haven't butchered that too much, but Glückschmerz means it is the feeling unhappy about the good fortune of others. So, rather than taking pleasure in someone's misfortune, Glückschmerz is when you feel unhappy that someone is doing better than you think they should be doing, or a bit like you were saying with the sporting example, you
Yeah.
kind of it's the justice thing again, isn't it? You're kind of thinking, no, they've got ahead too far based on whether it's their work ethic or maybe they got lucky with this or whatever it was. But I quite like that Gluckschmerz. Germans have got some quality little words for stuff that we don't have.
Yeah, I read that, and that even with the Schadenfreude, that in England we get a bit hung up about having the emotion. Oh, a bit conflicted. Why am I feeling so happy that they're sad? Germany apparently, is more propensity just to be like, I don't feel guilty about that. It's just a natural thing you feel. But I think that one I've watched films, or when you watch tearjerkers, or you watch films and things go well. I'm a sucker for like when someone in a film achieves something after a lot of tragedy and big struggle, and they're there at the end, like Seabiscuit or something like that, and the horse wins, and you're like, oh, flipping brilliant. So you have an emotion like I am happy that others, do well, obviously, and I can get pleasure from others people achieving and having pleasure, obviously. course, it's lovely. But again, if it's with a right, if it's in some lurking rivalry or someone you've already decided you don't quite like, or someone you think's unjust, or they've had too much of it, then that's not going to be there as much, is it? One thing, it's funny actually you've said that, because I think I might have said this in Laura's book. When you have a bit of success in your domain, I always found that it was easier to tell who was genuine, because when you had success, they could come and find you and genuinely look you in the face and say, "Well done, that's brilliant. Really happy for you. So good." And they were like, you could see they were physically happy. And other people would go missing. They couldn't. They couldn't. They were obviously feeling that word. They couldn't. What is it?
Gluckschmerz.
Glucksmirch. They
I'm
couldn't.
saying that as if I know what I'm saying. I'm hoping that's the right pronunciation.
Yeah. So I always found they found out who your true friends were when you had success in many ways than when you had a bit of tragedy. Because when you have tragedy, or not tragedy, but something goes wrong or a bit unlucky, they come around, they go, "Oh no, oh, unlucky. Yeah, hard luck. Yeah, you could have done. Oh, you played well. Oh, look, it's a bit easier to pull that face, isn't it? That you're a bit upset for them. If someone you find out at work that one of your co-workers has something brilliant happened to them, that you kind of think, wow, I was ahead of them on that, and I thought that should have been given to me, or I thought I should have. It's very hard to walk in the room and just genuinely be happy for them and pull the right face. So it's something you might avoid and send them a text later or a card, rather than actually going into the space. But when you are genuinely buzzing for somebody, it's dead easy, isn't it? It's just, "Hey, come here," and you're out. You're just easy to go in. So I always you always kind of found that even with certain rivals on tour and certain people who knew us and that, you could tell the people that were genuine.
Since leaving previous employment, or just leaving employment in general, the people who've got in touch and just kind of, "Oh, how are you getting on?" And the people
Mm,
who would never come to me when it was going well, or it was something I'd achieved, and you
yeah.
kind of know straight away. It's like they
Yes.
don't want to know if you're doing well.
Yes.
They're hoping that it was a bad choice,
Yes.
or you made the wrong decision, and it's really obvious.
Big time. Yeah. I've got friends that have seen me do things, and they're still in a bit of the same predicament. They've been stuck in the same jobs or whatever, and so on. But some of them are like dead happy. They just go for it. Oh, you're brilliant. So deep down they're kind of okay. But some people can't. They don't. It sticks in the throat. Yeah, I can see that with you. Like with when you've left work, and which people genuinely want you to really do well. And it's the old fable, isn't it, of the person who the family member who leaves town, and the one who stays behind and has to look after the fort, shall we say, and take care. And it's always this. Well, I hope they don't go on and have new adventures and all that. And it's kind of a theme, isn't it? That if you by you going away and succeeding and showing the way and doing really well, it pours a bit of light on their inability to do that take that risk, take that leap. So it's it's always in some people's minds. Oh, they had them big ideas, and they should have carried on plodding away like me. Makes them feel better about the plod.
One thing you mentioned that I thought was quite interesting, and maybe it comes back to the karma thing again. So obviously, at the minute, I'm giving it beans with you because of, if we're just using the Everton example. But I think there does come a point where it's almost like you've got to know the limit, because at some point, karma's going to come calling, and someone might be listening to this podcast in 20 years' time, and they're like, "What? The on about Liverpool went out of business in like 2000?" So you don't know what could happen in future. So there could
Yeah,
be a time where
yeah.
because you mentioned about storing up Schadenfreude, and you were like, "I wonder if there's a word for that," because you must be banking all this,
Mm.
thinking, "I'm kind of making a mental note of who's giving me all this stuff, because I'm at some point there's got to be a chance that I can go back at them."
Yeah, of course, and that's why that's great, isn't it? Because that's just football rivalry, isn't it? That's sporting banter, and that's what makes it so sweet. It's so cruel, isn't it, sport? Because I always thought this: when you win, you get bragging rights, you get everything, don't you? And you also get to re-edit. You get to re-edit what you thought about your team, or what you thought, every decision I made was right because now we've won. But when you lose, it's like you're left with no prize, no actual title, no nothing. What did we do wrong? Bit of shame, and everyone can weigh in on you. So it's like it's such a split. It's a bit like it's so unfair that it's not surprising that when you've experienced the down, the up is so good. It's almost a relief of not being down. That was a common thing. I spoke to some players at times, and even ones I work with on the mental side. It's not sometimes the fear. It's not the buzz of winning. It's the motivation to not feel the loss because the loss is so bad that for days, and then the doubts and the wins, the actual winning is a bit of a bonus for a lot of people. It's just not fair and you see it, don't you, in Champions League finals, and you see it in sports and people who've come missed out. You've got one team going absolutely crazy because they've knocked a penalty in, and the other team just on the floor.
I see that a lot or I did see that a lot in academia. You mentioned in the other episode you were talking about when you had your PhD
Yes,
viva, you started getting a bit edgy that day and you
yeah,
were
yeah,
a bit nervy and stuff. I think that's the driving emotion for a lot of people around that. It's not that they're so they want to get it, so they want to get the PhD and achieve it. It's because it's such, everyone knows that you're going for your viva
yeah,
that day, and everyone knows that you've just spent 5 or 6 years doing it, and so it's kind of like you're going in,
yeah,
and there will be people sat there thinking, "Oh, I hope he doesn't get that." For whatever that
yeah.
Schadenfreude. So it's almost like you want to get it just because it means that you didn't not get it. Because the worst thing will be coming out of that room and going, "No, I failed, or I didn't get it. I've got to resubmit it, or for whatever reason." And it's purely that, right? It's the relief of not having that, rather than the joy of I've achieved it, I've done it.
Well, and that links into some of this vulnerability psychology, doesn't it? About, I know Brené Brown wrote a book about it based on the quote. It's the person, was it the Roosevelt quote? It's the person who's in the fight that matters, not all the people on the doubters on the outside and all the criticisers and all the people. It's like the vulnerability to put yourself into a place where you can get in there. I always find football fans and sports fans weird because they're not actually the one actually doing it, are they? The self fulfillment can't be as deep being removed from it as, say, doing something genuinely self fulfilling. But so I think sports rivalries and banters are just about banter and status between mates, and it hurts, and blah blah blah. But I think in more serious terms, like going for something life changing, you have to be able to take some elements of knowing that people are just naturally going to have that Schadenfreude at you because you've taken a risk. You've put your neck on the line. You've gone on telly. You've moved. You've taken you've done something out of the ordinary. Therefore, people are just waiting for you to fall flat on your face because it. Therefore, they can sit back and say, that's you. That's your problem for thinking you're above your station. Sort of tall poppy thing, you think you're better than us, and you've gone for that, and kind of settles me down a bit because you failed. And that's part of the psychology of putting yourself out there, isn't it? On the line, you know these things are going on. People who are around. You know that they're waiting for you to cock up, and that's why you should keep your head down at times. You don't go out making massive pronouncements. I always find boxers fascinating, and MMA people. These fighters, they go out and they're just literally like, "I'm amazing. I'm going to knock your head off. I'm the best boxer ever." And maybe that's why it does sell. They do it to sell because you want them to get knocked out.
It comes across to me as a bit fake, that stuff
Yeah, it
now, where
does.
it's like
Yeah.
they've got a, when they have like fights at the weigh-ins and stuff, and you're like, I don't know if you saw it the other day, but Eddie Hall, was the world's strongest man, and
Yes, the English guy.
Bjornsson, who was the
Yeah.
mountain, they were having a boxing match in Dubai.
Right.
So the past few, it's been all that, and it just looked really, really insincere kind of rivalry. And maybe that's just me reading it wrong, but it was like they were just trying to hype it up to. I'd love it if I beat him and this and that, and they were trying at the weigh-in in the press conference. It was really like aggressive. Got into a scuffle because he insulted his mum and this kind of, and you're like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not having this.
Yeah. So they were deliberately So the boxers, they go out there, and it's just par for the course, I suppose, isn't it? That you go out there.
But if you're stood there and you're thinking, well, worst case, if
Yeah,
he knocks me on my backside, I'm still making £1,000,000 or whatever. You can't. It's different, isn't it? I just made a note then when you were talking about football fans again. I think for me that links, or it's maybe just a theory of mine that there is a link. Remember when we talked about meaning and purpose, and when we were on about nihilism and absurdism in that episode. I think we talked about religion. So in the absurdist view of Camus calling it intellectual suicide, didn't he? Where you just kind of forget thinking about it and go, I'm just going to give it up to religion. And he called that intellectual suicide. I wonder if sport's a little bit like that. So when you're wondering about how much meaning have I got in my life, what's my purpose, you can just kind of almost, as in a religion, go, well, I'm going to support this football team and put everything into that. So you're right, you're a lot of fan, and I've done it myself in my young years and stuff. You might wear the kit, you might have a replica kit and stuff, and you refer to the team as we, don't you? Like football,
yeah,
yeah, we've got Leeds this week, or we won that game, or we were lucky in that game. You're like, and it's visceral. The use of the word "we." There's a real
yeah,
belief that you're part of it, and it's like those players on that pitch don't even know who you are. Like you've never spoken to them or met them, but you've almost committed that intellectual suicide, going, yeah, this is a thing I'm part of, and I'm actually involved in it. Whereas the vast majority of football fans now, it's just watching it through a TV. They don't even go to the actual game. They're not in the ground even.
no, that's me. I think what's happened as well lately is, like with Twitter and everyone having an opinion now, and you know what I mean. You can go on Twitter and you can go, this player did that, and this player did this, and they should have played this formation, and this that. And that happens in WhatsApp groups as well. So there's almost a pressure to appear like you know what you're on about if you're a fan. So I think some of my thing, this is me being honest, I think because I know I'm quite good in one sport, and I know sports psychology, and I know a bit about coaching, and what have you. I think when it just comes to something I'm just totally and utterly removed from, once I start talking about it with my friends, I always feel like obliged to be a bit like, no, I've got to predict things and say things. That's why, So we had a chat yesterday about how you said I've not seen Everton actually play, but they were absolutely terrible. And then I said
Yeah, they were the worst team I've seen this year by a
they
mile.
are, and I thanks for that. And and I no, they are, and it's like, so then I go like, I'm thinking, well, what is it? I'm supposed to kind of work that out because I'm supposed to know about that. The different people do have different ways of coping with it, don't they? Some people just go, they're just awful, leave it alone. Some people analyze it to pieces. Some people say it's this, and this, and everyone looks for the reason, as if like to like, I'm not stupid for following this. And I've found that. So I think people are under a lot of pressure now as well for rationales of why they do what they do. Why are they stupid for doing that, and why are we right for doing this? That stereotypical thing of in years gone by of the granddad figure who will never change his mind about anything because he's always got to be right about everything, can never admit that he's wrong in anything. I think that's been hyped up to the max now. You've got to explain all the time why you're not stupid for supporting that team. So even though they're rubbish and you're getting laughed at, you've got to explain your way out of it.
And I think that Schadenfreude, I mean, I have a WhatsApp group with some mates where we have it's based around Predict the League, where you predict the scores each week and then you get points, and there's about 5 of us in there. And the Schadenfreude there, because of the way WhatsApp, say you, like exactly like you said, you've maybe predicted something or you've explained a particular result this way or that way and blah, 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 because you feel you have to. You'll get messages 3 months down the line, where it's like replying to your original one where you predicted something around this or that or that. And I did it with Liverpool this year. So when it was COVID was kicking off again, I was like, City are going to walk the league now because they thrive in the empty
Made
stadiums. Liverpool's struggling empty, so blah, 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 blah. And then now, so
Yeah.
I'm getting texts off my mates back, Schadenfreude, say, look at you, like you think you're going to win the league now, or you're in the race. You
Yeah,
wrote them off.
yeah. There's an intellectual type of, and that's what I mean. It's all traced and it's all written down.
That's what I mean. That record of stuff now, you can't just have a chat and give her your opinion and then it's forgotten about. It's all documented.
It's a little bit like I told you so. I'm right, and I might be losing, but I know why, and I'm right, and you should listen to me. So it's like, yeah, I'm still clever. I'm still got my stuff together, and you do. That this way of taking the edge off it. So the way of taking the edge off it is to go like, well, I'm criticizing them as well. You know, I'm by no means proud of this. So, and I know exactly why it's happening. In other words, if I was the manager now, I would be fixing this right now. You know, everyone's got that pressure to say. And so I've got mates that come at it from tactics, some come at it from physical, some come at it about board, the way the club's structured, some come at it historically, some come at it as it's a curse. You know, like everyone's throwing in these versions as if to say, yeah, but I've got. Don't doubt me. I'm still a clever man. You know, just because it's all going on. It takes the pain away slightly if you feel that you still got. You at least I know why it's happening. But speaking of that, yeah, I put a massive bet on Liverpool to win the league to take the edge off. If they do, I thought 2-1 was a really good odds actually. It's a bit like, well, even if they win, at least I was clever to do that. It's like, you know, it's just it's a
I just think it's an interesting one to because it's such a inherent human emotion. I just think it's an interesting one to just raise it to the surface a little bit and consider because we all do it and we all see it in other people, but maybe we're not as conscious of it as we maybe could be sometimes.
one of the things that I always say to the people we teach at the university and who I work with as well in sport is if they get your own house in order, get your own emotional center right. So look after your own game. You know, get your own mind right, get your family right, get your all that stuff. You know, clean your room, all that stuff. Get in balance. Look after yourself. And I think that as any person, you know, what makes you tick. Orientate yourself in the day. You know, this is what makes me feel better. So just recently, I've just been eating a bit better again, you know, and trying to sort out a bit of my weight and my bit of that. Just something inside, just personal. I feel a little bit better, and just by doing that, you know, like this, you know, we're bantering. This, you actually don't feel as envious or as jealous. You feel a little bit more self-fulfilled. You feel a little bit more together. So when the inevitable trip ups in life come along, you know, like you said, you're always fallible to people picking at you, and you're always going to fail, and you're always going to get laughed at, and your projects are going to not always work out, and your sports teams will lose, and your car's going to burst its tire, and your children are going to, you know, fail an exam when you told them they're all going to pass, and so the inevitable things are going to happen. If you've got yourself together as best you can, you're going to be less susceptible to being a type of constantly searching to look at people's bad and to take pleasure from it. You're always going to do it because it's quite a natural thing. But you know, if you can really get yourself sorted out, and so that's the learning for Schadenfreude for me. I say to the players and the students and that, you know, so if you can then get to a point where you're genuinely happy for people when they have a bit of good news, yeah, you can be the butt of the joke, you can take the banter, it's not worked out for you, take it, you're not going to like it, but it is a bit funny, it's not so serious, then you're going to therefore be able to keep playing the game of life, really. You're going to be able to keep putting yourself out there, throwing banter coming back. And then when you sit down with your friends and you know, you can actually might go, I didn't, you know, well done, good for you. It's crap being an Everton fan. I bet I'm pleased for you. You know, that kind of thing. I think when you haven't got yourself together, like you said, and you're all in on your football team, and that's all you have on your meaning, or you're all in on your job, or you're all in on your girlfriend or your partner, or you're all in on your kids, and that's the only place you can become very spiky if that thing goes slightly off, and then you can become a bit of an idiot and a bit of a nasty person, and then possibly then that's where the sadistic line is crossed. It goes from just a Schadenfreude to becoming a bit of an envious, sadistic, bitter and twisted person. Can't take a joke, and then starts to go down them depths of revenge and bitterness and nastiness, really.
And bullying as well, I think.
Bullying. Yeah, absolutely, definitely bullying. Yeah,
I'm treading that line between when is it just a bit of banter with Danny and a bit of Schadenfreude versus am I now bullying him because Everton keep losing? That's the line I've got
yeah. I mean, I've got an appointment later with a psychotherapist about this, but don't worry about it.